Now I'm going to have to be really fast.
You're good.
Okay,
You're good.
okay, good. Okay, everybody, hello. How is everybody doing? Okay, hopefully nobody snores in here. If you know what I mean. I'm just saying. So, okay, so welcome to, I actually, see, this is what happens when you edit slides in the middle of the night. I actually put something in here for my dad. Okay, welcome to my talk titled Understanding the Why in Accessibility, explaining why we do what we do. I want to give a quick shout out to my dad in the audience. Right over there. He's a retired Air Force captain. He's half of the reason I'm here. And I would like everybody at once to say, "What's up?" Okay. 1, 2, 3. What's up? Okay, good job. There you go. Love you, Dad. Okay, so I just like a quick show of hands first. How many in the audience are newbies to accessibility? Just raise your hand. Okay, maybe like 5. Okay. And how many are like intermediate? Like they know some, but they're not an expert. Okay. Maybe 10. Okay. And then how many are like, shh, I'm good. I'm a guru. Yeah, I know. Okay. I'm not any of those, but that's fine. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Catherine Shaw, but my nickname is Kat, so you can call me Kat. I'm a lead engineer at Lullabot. I have been a web developer since 1999. That's a long time. Yes, I know. Don't do the math. I have been a digital accessibility specialist and advocate since 2005. I've been a Drupal developer since 2012. I've been Acquiesce certified since 2016, and I got my CPACC certification in 2017. So you can find me on the various social media, excluding one of them. I think you can guess which one, at Kat Ann Shaw. So I just wanted to go first off over what is the purpose of this talk. So what is our why? So we often lose sight of why we do what we do, and I think it's because of various distractions. So the first group I say is it's not our fault, and this can come from life's distractions. So family, your friends, your colleagues, weddings, funerals, deaths, lots of bad things. And that's just life, right? But the other kind of distractions that can cause that are people. And I would say that they fall into 2 categories. They are people that think it's a waste of time and money. They just don't see the point. These are some of the reasons. They just choose to ignore it because of a lack of understanding or motivation. And they just don't connect the dots. And one of the two of the reasons they don't is they're ignoring the potential customers, which is lost revenue, and they also are sending a negative vibe to their own employees a lot of the time because they either have disabilities or they have somebody in their family with disabilities. And a lot of the time, those disabilities are hidden. So, a lot of us have hidden disabilities that we just don't want to talk about. So I say to the people that are the naysayers, the cynics, and the Debbie Downers of the world, you need to listen up. So does this sound familiar to anybody? Yeah? Okay. So we'll see if this works. Oh, I forgot to turn on the volume.
April will be the sound.
Oh, it didn't work. It says wah wah. I'll do it for myself. Okay, so this is my why. It actually started a long time ago when I was 18, and I worked at a place called Hope Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, and I worked, it's basically a hotel or motel for the military, and I worked with a gentleman who had developmental disabilities, and he was a really cool guy. And I was behind the desk, and I was just joking with some other people that I worked with, and I just said what a lot of people do, and they say, duh. And he just stopped what he was doing. He was cleaning. He stopped what he was doing, and he looked at me, and he looked just disappointed. I wouldn't say disgusted. He just looked disappointed. And he actually confronted me, and I was actually really, now I'm grateful. At the time, I was very embarrassed. And he said, you shouldn't say that. That really hurts my feelings. That really bothered me. And it was like, I'm 18. So I was just like, I'd never thought about that. How many of us say that word, right? And so that was really my first moment of connecting the dots when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to thinking of others with disabilities and having that empathy that's built in. So actually, as I raised my kids through life, I actually told them I didn't want to hear that word. They shouldn't say it, and I gave them the story of when I was 18 and what happened. So I actually just thought of that during this talk. It was something I hadn't thought of. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna mention that. So when I started working for Douglas County, Kansas, as their webmaster, obviously that was going to involve some local government, so that was going to involve being compliant. And so that's kind of where I started getting into accessibility. But my real aha moment came with a presentation at a users group in Kansas City, where a gentleman that worked for the GSA, he was also blind, he came and presented for us. And he presented with a screen reader, and I had never had an experience with a screen reader. If you've never experienced a screen reader, you definitely should. If you have a Mac, try the VoiceOver, and if you don't, if you use Windows, try NVDA, it's free. And so it was just really eye-opening to hear what it sounded like for a blind user to use a screen reader. And also, then he went through, these are the issues I have, and these are the fixes you can do, some just really easy fixes to make my life easier. And so I quickly went home from there, or not home, I went to work from there, and started fixing the small things like the alt text and link text and things like that. And that was my aha moment, and I haven't really looked back. That was my look forward moment. So, yeah, this is really a bummer. He said challenge accepted. So, but you can't hear it, can you? Okay. It's really ruining this for me. I don't think, yeah, okay. So I'd like to ask the audience just a quick answer. What is your why? Does anybody have like a quick answer of why they got into accessibility or interested in accessibility?
When I was a teacher, I had a blind student, and she had said to me, if you could highlight these images on these graphs, with my screen reader could read it. It never had occurred to me that a blind person could use a phone. I know that sounds really silly, but I was inexperienced, and so she showed me. That was the first time I ever experienced a screen reader. She showed me what it sounded like to her to scroll through my Canvas course and identify like the questions and how she could or couldn't interact with like the graphs.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't grow up with somebody that's blind in your family, there's really no way for us to know that, So that's a very good example. Thanks for sharing that. Go ahead, Jenna.
My mom's blind, and she didn't go blind until her early 30s, kind of mid 30s, and she's not completely like in the dark room blind, so she didn't really have access to the tools or education because she was raising kids and had a family, and we didn't really know what was going on. So I really just kind of helped her navigate the world, and we just made it up. So
yeah.
I'd be like, curb, you can't go that way, go this way. When we were walking, and then when I got into the tech world, I'm not a developer, I'm in sales. I really advocated for it when defining our approach to projects, and luckily I worked with someone who was super passionate about accessibility like you, and now I work with you, luckily enough. So I just continue to be interested in it because I think it helps more than just my mom. It helps everyone. Better accessibility is better for everyone.
Yeah, I think it is, absolutely. And how many times, if you look at me being a parent, having a stroller, we use universal design and being able to go up a curb because of accessibility in universal design. So, go ahead, Aubrey.
I first learned about accessibility back in 2004. If anyone remembers Mark Pilgrim's dive into accessibility way back in the day, I thought it was cool to learn about it, but it became more personal in 2010 when my dad had an accident that left him a quadriplegic, so he couldn't feel anything from his shoulders down. And seeing him try to use the internet and try to do things online, like without being able to type or do anything, he had to do everything voice activated. Like that really got me into accessibility and different assistive technologies and things with that. So yeah. That's a
really amazing, and it's very similar to Christopher Reeve. We talked about that.
Yeah,
very similar.
Yep.
So yeah, real quick, completely off topic. Marky, I see you. Keep those eyes open. Does anybody know how to connect to the Bluetooth here? The speaker. It's yeah, it's actually going to be kind of important. So I have one here, but that would be helpful.
What speaker?
This here.
Oh, this is not a speaker.
That's
This is a
not a speaker?
microphone.
Okay, I have this.
So if you have another one, we can
I
use
do,
that.
but it's not turning on. Oh, there we go.
Sweet. So if you want to connect to that, I think there is a sound
I
in
think
the
that might
house
be
too,
it.
but we never really used it.
That might be it.
Try.
Okay. Let me see if this works. You want me to go back and you want to hear this?
Yeah.
Okay. So much better, right? Okay. And then we got to hear the Barney optimist.
Challenge accepted.
There we go. Okay. Now, so thank you for sharing all of your why. Some of the notes I had are like, what motivates you to work in accessibility? Why do you continue to work in accessibility despite the naysayers, and how do you keep yourself motivated? So I think that your answers are really great, and I really appreciate you sharing that. So, and I said, okay, are you ready to get started? And then
Everyone signed? Yes. Good. On we go.
okay, got to sneak some Willy Wonka. So what we'll cover is who are we working for? What is it like for users with disabilities? When should we start? Where can we have the greatest impact? Why should we want to invest the time and money? And how should we approach this challenge? So first I'd like to start with a quote from Christopher Reeve. And he said, "Some people are walking around with full use of their bodies and they're more paralyzed than I am." And I thought that was pretty profound. And I don't think Mike Anello is in here, and I was going to give him some crap, but he is the best superhero of all time, not Batman. So I just wanted to make sure he knew that. So just a quick thing on the audience. Who do you think we're working for? If you just like one or two words.
People.
People?
Everyone.
Everyone. Very good. Okay, so who do we think we're working for? I think a lot of the time we think we're working for bosses, right? The C-suite, the supervisors, the managers, those kinds of people. The stakeholders, right? The clients and the customers, the departments, boards, the shareholders, elected officials, things like that, depending on if you're in local government or not. And then you have the governments. Right now it's a little weird, but normally you have the federal, state, local government, the tribal, the territory. You have agencies, departments, you have utilities, and other entities. But I wanted to share, I asked Imogen a question, and I asked, what are your experiences with accessibility when it comes to bosses, stakeholders, and governments? And Imogen said, during company town halls, I've been called an edge case. During a presentation when I asked for the slides to not be so text-heavy. Context, virtual presentations on Google Meets, the slides were so text-heavy that when captions were turned on, it pushed the slide up more and made it unreadable. When I suggested bullet points across 3 slides instead, I was called an edge case, not good. And I agree with her. I asked Matthew Saunders the same question, and he said, it has been varied if I'm honest. When it comes to bosses, it often feels like we do the least possible to reach the lowest legal bar. Stakeholders want to ensure that the accessibility guidelines are followed, but I've seen situations where they don't want to pay for that as part of that meal. Government tends to want want accessibility to be handled correctly. Meryl Evans, I asked her, and she said they're focused on the money. Very simple. And I asked Helena that, and I'm putting Helena and Max. This is how I'm gonna title this. So, Helena and Max answered, I think it's important not to create high barriers to access for accommodation because that often results in people who need it not getting it. For instance, Disney recently changed their disability access program and made the application process for disability services much more onerous for families. Although Max would likely qualify, I don't have 5 hours to sit on hold to talk to somebody to apply. So the results was that we started going to other theme parks instead. Making it difficult to access accommodations can make things just as inaccessible as not providing them at all if people don't have the bandwidth to navigate that path to receiving them. Very, very good. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. So who should we really be working for? You all had the great answer. It's all of our users, and it's always should include the users with disabilities, their families, their friends, their colleagues. And don't forget about the people with temporary disabilities, right? And also hidden disabilities. I hurt my shoulder, a year or two ago, and I understood temporary disabilities. It really sucked. So let's look at some quick stats. So according to the CDC, 28.7 or 1 in 4 adults in the U.S. have one or more disabilities. And according to the Saferth Shaw LLP, the law firm, in June of 2024, so it's only half of the year, 4,280 ADA lawsuits were filed. And that's a lot. And according to WHO, so the World Health Organization, there's 16% or 1 in 6 people, so that's not just adults, globally have one or more disabilities. So I did ask Amy June, what is your answer to the question, who are we working for, and how does that question make you feel? She answered, as you can see from my previous answer, I do believe everyone. Accessibility equals usability. We are also working for future generations, so accessibility is built in rather than an add-on. And Matthew said that the question made him feel validated, valued, intentional, understood, and seen. So I thought that was really great. Meryl said not just families, but also friends and colleagues. And Helena and Max said, I think it's also important to point out that accessible websites increase personal agency and allow people with disabilities to handle things online for themselves instead of having to rely on their families to help them, which is both empowering for the disabled user and lowers the administrative burden of caretaking. So my answer would be to support everyone and don't lose sight of your goal. And that's really the important part. So for the bosses and the stakeholders, use aids and tools to build empathy and understanding. Explain accessibility standards and conformance laws, but do it in plain language. And demonstrate the lost revenue by showing the percentage of people with disabilities. For people with disabilities and their families, involve them in the conversation, talk to them, and remember, they're human too. We're all human, right? We have that in common, or most of us. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and ask them for their best approaches to fix accessibility issues. They're going to give you the best feedback. So what is it like for users with disabilities? One or two words from the audience. What do you think it's like for people with disabilities in the world, especially the digital world, when it comes to accessibility?
Frustrating?
Yeah.
Difficult?
Difficult, yeah.
Demeaning?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, these are the categories, according to the W3C, of the types of disabilities. So you have the auditory, which includes the deafness, deaf blindness, and hard of hearing. You have cognitive and learning, which is, ADHD, age-related, autism, brain injury, dyslexia, and includes hidden disabilities. You have physical, which could include amputation, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, seizure and migraine, which I have, tremor and spasms, and temporary, like a broken foot or toe from extreme karaoke. Right over there. And speech, which is muteness, speech sound disorder and stuttering, and visual, which could be blindness or color blindness or deaf blindness or low vision. And one thing to remind everybody, we all get old. That's another thing we all share. So we're going to be going through some of these eventually, right? So how do disabled users use the web? They use it with two different techniques or ways of doing things. So one is, a lot of you know, it's called Assistive Technologies. I'm going to refer to it as AT. So Assistive Technology is assistive software and hardware that enhances the web interaction for individuals with disabilities. And you probably know, obviously, a lot of these screen readers and screen magnifiers, braille keyboards, speech recognition, switch devices. And then there's adaptive strategies. So those are methods and techniques that individuals use to enhance web interaction. And a lot of us use this on a daily basis, like text resizing, adjusting the mouse speed, removing animations, captions and transcripts and audio descriptions on videos and audio. So again, to prevent the tongue twisters, I'm going to refer to Assistive Technologies as AT and Adaptive Strategies as AS, because I know I'm not going to be able to say that the rest of the time. So here's some pictures of some, it's true, Assistive Technology, see, I said it, okay, AT. So single switch device is the first photo, and it enables the user to the ability to access an on-screen computer keyboard. And the second photo is a refreshable Braille display, and it connects a Braille display with a keyboard for users who are blind. And the third one is actually a child's wheelchair, and I think a lot of people wouldn't think of a wheelchair as being an assistive technology, but it is. And that's a child-sized wheelchair for a child with cancer from the National Cancer Institute, and it's adorable. So. Then you have Adaptive Strategies, AS. The first picture is a person adjusting their accessibility settings on their mobile phone. And when you have an iPhone or an Android, you have to go to Settings, then Accessibility. I checked. And it's the same, and there's a lot of cool things on there. So even if you don't need them, just check them out. It's pretty cool. And the second one is a screenshot of a YouTube video that I did for one of my talks, What the Heck is ARIA, with Amy June. And you can see on there it has captions, and so that shows that those are synchronized captions for the video. Okay, so Amy June, I asked what is it like to use AT and AS, and she said, sometimes frustrating. I don't use a mouse, so a digital asset. So if a digital asset doesn't highlight on focus, I don't know where I am on the page. Or if I have to tab all the way through a site to close the banner, arg! I did the best I could on that. Also, captions. Oh, yeah, I should have had you do it. Also, arg. Also, captions, when not themed right, can be difficult to read. Color contrast, all caps, obscuring content. So I prefer transcripts in a different window. If AT works the way I expect, it's wonderful. If I know folks have made an effort to include me in their products and services, it makes a difference if I continue or start using what they offer. Matthew said that's an interesting question. I don't know what it is like or not being to be neurodivergent to compare my experiences with others. I managed before they were readily available, though. I am grateful that tools exist that can help me work and play more efficiently. And Helen and Matt said, it's very empowering when it's offered. So when should we start? This should be an easy, there you go, love it. Now, okay, so progress over perfection. I love this t-shirt, I need to get one. This is Merrill Evans' t-shirt, and a lot of people have probably seen it. Progress over perfection. Start small, move on from there, right? So the time is now. Start small, expand out from there. That's the message there. And then I asked, what are some experiences you'd like to share concerning your own disability and digital accessibility? And Amy June said, this is more about orgs struggling to find my abilities worth spending money on. I have mobility issues which warrant staying closer or not walking to venues during conferences. Sometimes that is more expensive, and I have had employers not want to spend the extra money on a closer room or lifts. I've had to come back with a doctor note or reasonable accommodations. I have been at so many conferences where there are no captions, or where speakers could have had speaker resources for learning how to turn on Google captioning, but the education wasn't provided. And I wanted to make sure they were still working. Okay, Matthew said, I'm dyslexic and have ADD. Reading large documents can be a challenge. I will often use a screen reader to read along with me as I digest text on the screen. When I'm reading books, I'll sometimes check to see if Audible has the text available on an audiobook. I'm also red-green colorblind. This doesn't mean I can't see color. It just means I see it differently than non-colorblind people. I thought that was interesting that he called us non-colorblind people. See, he sees it like that. It also makes seeing things that don't have a lot of contrast much more difficult for me. I appreciate online tools that ensure there is high contrast in text and the interface. I think of my noise-canceling headphones as being an assistive device. I wear them and listen to brown noise to help me concentrate. I also consider being able to work from home an agent of accessibility. I mask less, which means I can be much more effective because my energy isn't going into masking. And I just noticed that's overlapping, and I will fix that because that is an accessibility issue. For me, I have migraine, so I have a migraine lamp. I have light sensitivity, so I use dark mode, and I am always surprised at the amount of sites that don't have dark mode on them, and it really is disappointing. So Merrill said digital accessibility is more than assistive technologies, it's processes, and digital accessibility cannot be siloed because accessibility crosses non-digital boundaries. For example, ordering online but returning to a physical store. And Helen and Max said for Max, digital accessibility includes features like being able to lock the whole screen 7 seconds after the lock button is hit. This allows us to turn on a show for him, then hit play, then hand it to him. He doesn't understand that he can't touch the characters in his show without pausing it or rewinding it. But that new feature made it possible for him to watch a show independently while holding his tablet. So where can we have the greatest impact? This might be a little bit harder question. Does anybody have an answer? Where would you, if you were to start right now, what would you do?
Where you are, like little.
Huh? Low-hanging fruit would be where I'd start. So start with the low-hanging fruit. That's what I did. When I went back to my work, I started with the low-hanging fruit. So I went with the links, I went with the buttons, I went with the images, the labels, the heading structure, and color contrast. I did things that were going to have the biggest effect. Forms, it has the biggest effect. Navigation, right? Keyboard access is huge because that's going to affect not only keyboard-only users, but it's going to affect screen reader users. Those are the kinds of things that are going to have the greatest impact. So functionality, focus behavior, making sure your focus is visible, making sure that it works properly, your media files and your embeds, and your mobile, making sure that everything works on a mobile device. More and more of the world is actually using a mobile device over a desktop or a laptop device. So that's just the way things are going. Making sure you have semantic structure in your markup, and making sure your content's readable. And with components and pages, you got to make sure that you use analytics reports to find popular pages, and then create a list of components used on your site or app to then go and audit, right? And to make sure that everything is accessible. So also using a shift left methodology is very important. Don't build everything and then test. You should test throughout the whole process. So create your assets and your design system and your sub-theme and your components and templates and recipes or whatever you want to do. And test them while you're doing it, right? Test them with design system plugins and component library alley add-ons and automated testing and manual testing and feature and commit automations. There's so many different ways you can test, and overlapping is very important. And then auditing, having regular audits with a subject matter expert is very important, along with usability testing by users who actually use assistive technology along with your internal team. And then making sure it's consistent and continuous is very important as well. So why should we want to invest the time and the money? I could ask this because we care, right? I think I could see that from everybody. Well, I see 3 cases, and you always need to say this. The first one's the legal case. You have the standards, right? The WCAG and all of those. You have the laws, the U.S. federal laws, the U.S. state laws, and you have the global laws. And the global laws, go ahead. 5
minutes.
5 minutes, thank you. I appreciate the time check. And the business case, you have common questions that you'll hear. Why do we work to make things accessible? What's the point of making the change only to be accessible? And why can't I just make the accessibility fix later? And when people ask you those kinds of questions, just refer back to the stats that I mentioned earlier of the amount of people that have a disability. And raise key questions and points like, why aren't we trying to reach out more to the untapped customer base? And why don't we make it a top priority? And why aren't we being more proactive to fix the accessibility issues with, that many lawsuits existing? The human case, it's the right thing to do, full stop. Our goal is to build understanding and empathy with our bosses and stakeholders however you can. So talk from the user's point of view, perform usability testing, explain hidden disabilities, and use accessibility simulation tools and methods. And I know that's controversial, but I've seen it work with multiple people. An example would be the web simulation tool. You can use it for showing how something looks for a colorblind user. Raise key points and questions to your team. If we had a stated company values, why aren't we following them? How does our approach to accessibility affect employees with disabilities and employees who have disabled family members? Are we creating an inclusive environment where everyone, regardless of ability, can fully participate? And does our approach to accessibility demonstrate that everyone is valued and respected? So I'm going to skip these, but just read these. These are great quotes from these wonderful people. How should we approach this challenge? Adopt an accessibility standards and laws, develop an accessibility program, incorporate usability testing with users of AT and AS, perform regular accessibility audits quarterly, biannually, or annually, integrate a shift left methodology in every project, and use established design systems with accessibility built into the processes. I found these 5, 1, 2, 3, so I found these 4, and then there's also Drupal's Design System Initiative, and I highly recommend checking these out. I shared these slides on the Florida Drupal campsite already, and I'll share them on social media. And just really quick, what it's like for auditory disabilities.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Accessibility Talks, or Ally Talks, A11.
Pause. Okay, so I'm going to play. Okay, so this is what it's like for a deaf user to look at a video. You could see the Imogen's talking, but you can't hear anything, and you can't see any closed captions. So that's not accessible. But as soon as you click captions, you have captions that are synchronized to her speech. So that makes it accessible for somebody that's deaf, right? But for us, you turn the volume.
The Linux Foundation, and I also sit on the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation's Deaf and Hard of Hearing Working Group.
So for people with cognitive disabilities, I want you to look at this text. It's a big blob of text. It's very informational about me, but it's it's just difficult. But I think this is a better way to structure your content. You have headings, and you have the content broken up. It's much easier to understand. Okay, so physical disabilities. This one would be target size. So if you look at the first video on the bottom, this is the simulation tool for Parkinson's. And you can see the really, really, really tiny pager links. It's really difficult to click them because they're so small. But if you look at the second video on the right, they're much bigger, and it's still difficult for somebody with Parkinson's disease, but it's easier because they're bigger target size. Okay, so focus disability. Oh, yeah, there we go. You could see that the focus on dark mode with the white outline is very easy to see for that. So that's really important to make sure that you account for dark mode and light mode when you set that up. Phone numbers should always be links. And when you do them, you should always put a TEL in front of them, and you can put the country code as well to make them so that they work in other countries. If it's a TTY number for people that use that service, you should put a label in front. And if it's within a form, you should add a label that connects with the phone number. So for speech disabilities in contact forms, if you have phone numbers like this, you see that they're not linked. Those aren't, I mean, how are they going to use that? They're not going to be able to click it and use their TTY service, their TRS service. If you make them linked, they can use their telephone relay service, which you should look up later because I don't have time. But this is a great contact form because it has those phone numbers, but it also has ways that they can enter their information, they can choose their contact preferences, and they can even put if they are a TTY user for to you know, say, hey, this is what I do. So here's a little fun one for my dad. So alt text. This is a good alt text. It's a little girl smiling. So
little girl smiling.
And this is me with my afro. Yes. Here's another one.
Little girl cat smiling, sitting in a chair.
And this is the best.
A girl cat smiling, sitting in a chair with a glorious afro hairdo.
So, I think that is the best one, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay, so you could see that little girl smiling, I mean, that's alt text is good, but this one is the best and it's most descriptive, and if somebody's blind, they're gonna think, man, that girl, she's got a glorious afro, right? So, okay, so here are alerts. How much time? I'm getting close. Oh, is somebody coming right at 3 to speak?
No, it's 30 minutes.
There's usually like a gap.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So this demonstrates why adding icons to alerts is necessary. So these are alerts from the US Web Design System. They have color, they have icons, and they look great. But let's remove the icons, and you just have color. And it's like, okay, I can see color, I'm fine, right? But let's remove the icons, let's remove color. If you're a colorblind user with you can't see it, how are you supposed to tell which one it is? The only way you can is by reading them. And the bottom one there is one that you would actually use on a form. So that's very difficult. So what's next? We got some key takeaways. What are some key takeaways from this talk, and how can we contribute to make others understand the why? I'm going to do a quick quiz, see who can answer these. Who should we really be working for?
Everyone.
People with disabilities and their families. But that's everyone. Oh my God, I went the wrong way. Okay, what is it like for users with disabilities?
Frustrating.
Digital world is far too difficult for users with disabilities. It's our job to fix that. When should we start?
Right now.
Nice. Right? Time is now. Remember, progress over perfection. Where can we have the greatest impact?
Low-hanging fruit.
Perfect. Start with the low-hanging fruit and go from there. Why should we want to invest the time and the money?
Because we care. And it's lost revenue.
Legal, business, human case. The human case is the number one reason, but you got to give reason for some people. And 25% of users equals lost revenue, and sometimes that's what you got to say to motivate people. And finally, how should we approach this challenge? I know I went fast through this one.
Viciously.
One step at a time, using multiple overlapping accessibility tools. And I didn't really get into that because I rushed. But when you use your accessibility tools, don't rely on one tool. Even if it's like a full-on tool, have a few, and because one tool is not going to catch everything. So if you have, let's say, 2 or 3 main checkers, and then you have some different color contrast checkers, that's going to really help you to guarantee that you catch a lot of the issues. So here are some links on how to contribute to different foundations, including the TCBD Foundation. I wrote that right?
Thanks,
okay,
yeah.
You're welcome. And I wanted to end on this quote from Michael J. Fox: "Discipline is just doing the same thing the right way, whether anyone's watching or not."
Aww.
And a quote from some woman named Kat Shaw: "Be a ripple, not a barrier."
Yeah.
It just came to my head. Thank you. I want to thank you to all the interviewees: Amy, June, Matthew, Helena, and Max, and Meryl. Isn't that boy cute?
Yeah.
He's adorable. So here's some credits, some resources, and questions. I don't know if we have enough time. So I know somebody has to set up for their next thing.
I don't
So
think there's anything in here.
okay, cool. Does anybody have any questions?
Next, but it's not right now.
Go ahead.
What would you recommend? I'm a freelance back-end type developer, so I don't do a lot of front-end things. In Drupal, what's the easiest way I can join the bandwagon?
I say and I'm going to repeat it for the recording. So as a back-end developer, what are the easiest ways I can incorporate accessibility? So there are a few different things I would do. So Drupal has some really great accessibility modules and features. Actually, I can let me go back here. So what I would do is go here. Okay, so this is the Drupal accessibility page, and it has a lot of great information on it. And I would look through down here, and it has automated testing. It has some other information about contributed modules. So when you click through to these, you're going to find some different information. So I would install some modules. There's one that I used to use called Style Guide, for instance, for front end. But there's other ones that are more like automated testing kind of tools that you could put on your PRs as you create them. And that's what I would do as a back-end developer. Okay, so yeah, Axe. I would focus on Axe because Axe really is like the engine to a lot of AXE. They're the engine to a lot of accessibility tools.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Make sure your HTML is semantic. Really makes that makes the difference for all the technologies. If you're just putting stuff out willy-nilly, it's hard for all this assistive technology to follow along. So as a back-end developer, that's your goal.
Yep.
Thanks.
Anything else? Going once? Nope. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.